Welcome to Pharmaceutical Executives podcast series, Managing in the Era of Lean, featuring winners of the 2011 Emerging Leadership Awards, brought to you by Cegedim Relationship Management, the life sciences industry's leading provider of CRM, marketing, regulatory compliance, and data management solutions. For more information, please visit them on the web at www.cegedim.com.
Hello and welcome to Pharmaceutical Executive Magazine's Emerging Pharma Leaders 2011 podcast series. This is Jeff Schindler, Managing Editor of PharmExec, and I'm pleased to moderate our discussion today that will delve into key differentiators of leadership for the pharmaceutical industry in the 21st century. PharmExec's annual Emerging Pharma Leaders program showcases the best and brightest under the age of 45, the rising stars of the industry with an established record of leadership across diverse functions and geographies, in small molecules, in biologics, diagnostics, and vaccines that will lead it into the future. One of our objectives in creating this esteemed group is to celebrate the virtues of diversity. It's a precondition for helping large organizations adjust to a globalizing commercial environment. And so, with me today is one of our 30 emerging leaders chosen by the editors of PharmExec, Mr. Byron Litten, Senior Director of Sales in the Oncology Business Unit at Eli Lilly. Byron, I'd like to thank you very much for taking the time to join us today.
Yes, thanks, Jeff. Glad to be here.
And if you don't mind, I'd like to kick off our talk by asking you first if you could tell me a little bit about your career path in pharma and how you landed in your current position today.
Yeah, I think that my career path to date has been, if you're going to sum it up in a word, probably circuitous. And that was by luck early on and maybe a little bit of late by plan. And so for me, my time, the majority of my time in the industry has been spent in and around the oncology space. Very early on, I saw other therapeutic areas, and part of that touched oncology. And then for me, as I joined Eli Lilly and Company in 2000, became full-time oncology. And so under that, consistency in the therapeutic area, I've seen a number of different functions: sales, market research. I've spent time in pure marketing seats in both the U.S. affiliate and in global roles, and I'm currently in a sales leadership role in the U.S. affiliate. And so for me, I've been able to see and do a lot of different things touching different parts of our business, and they've lent really to having some depth and experiences. And so when folks ask me within our organization or outside, really what should that plan be, I tell them a couple of things. I tell them either pick a functional area that's going to be your home, or pick a therapeutic area that's going to be your home, because you'll need to get depth. I think if you're an inch deep and a mile wide and you don't have any firm roots anyplace, I think that's more tenuous. So I'd say go get as much diversity of experience as possible, but pick either a functional area or a therapeutic area and make it yours. Again, that gives you depth, and then I think someone also owns you when you sit in one of those two camps over an extended period of time.
Given your experience and your current role as it sits at Lilly, what do you feel makes an effective leader? What are some of the necessary traits or skills you would look for?
Yeah, I think there's no recipe here. But as I take a look and as you study leadership, and I think our leadership dynamic is changing, I think, with the demographic and the age of those people who want to be led and are part of organizations. I think modern leadership is emerging. And I think that there are threads, though, that are consistent across time. And to me, I think a big part of that is being able to create and then lend a vision to people that's durable and that's consistent over time. I think that's awfully important. There are additionally a couple of traits that I think are important for people in any position, whether you're in leadership or not, and these are also very simple. I like smart and I like tough. And in our industry, fortunately, there's a lot of smart going around, and so I'll take tough if I'm allowed to have one of those two in a little extra portion. And so I think that is also very necessary in today's time. We're in the middle of tough decisions with much higher frequency than I think we made them in the past. And I think to be able to have that vision that's your guidepost and that you hang for other people, and then allows you to have some consistency when things come your way, and you have that mental toughness to be able to make the decisions. That grouping, the confluence of those three things, I think sets you up to be a successful leader in today's pace, in today's age.
So when you say tough, you really mean definitive and being confident in a person's role and decision-making ability? Is that what I'm garnering?
Yeah, Jeff, I think there's a line here and there's a balance. I think that today's leader, both because of the fact that the environment is changing, and then for the people that we serve and we work for that are within our teams, I think you have to remain flexible and coachable and teachable from the bottom up, that you're open to those things that your people say and to those things that you see in the environment around you, and that can change you, is not a lack of toughness. I think that is the piece in modern leadership that is tough, and to be able to make those calls, to be able to see those balls and strikes with absolute clarity linked to your vision, I think is the piece. So when I say toughness, I'm not thinking dictator and an old school 1950s supervisor. I'm thinking that you're able to be really, really hard, really, really tough on issues, but flexible and malleable at the same time.
What else do you consider when you're looking to put together your team and your team members? I mean, do you consider, let's say, their diversity in their roles or their backgrounds, or what different qualities an individual might bring to the table? What are the certain key elements you look for in your team members?
Yeah, I mean, there again, I'm a big fan of smart and tough, but I think beyond that, I really like diversity of experiences. I like diversity of thought, and I like the willingness to challenge. And I don't think that that's always been rewarded in organizations in the past. And so I don't think we've conditioned people to do that to the extent that they really could or should. And so I like those people, again, as Jeff, you and I have talked previously, who are willing to do something differently than the way I would have done it, and I can know that that's done well, and see it be transformed or see it be built in a way that's very different than I would have done that. Those are the things that I'm most proud of. I also, even within that, like that same person who, when it's time and you want people to act in lockstep and act with oneness, that they can own an initiative and a project and movement as if it was their own thought. And I think that balance between the person being willing to take a risk, speak their mind, run in a certain direction with confidence, but then at some point in time be willing to come back and say, okay, it's time for us to act with oneness. Those are things that I think I really value from the team. And by the way, linking it to one of the first things that I value here, I find that those people that have the most diverse, broad experiences are able to get to that place much, much quicker, much more easily.
And it's tougher now. It's good to have that, that diversity and the different skill set, because again, we're in a changing landscape of pharma now, and with that changing landscape comes certain, changing essentials of leadership behavior. So how do you motivate your staff in an environment that's now really more focused on, doing more with less?
I think the key word here is motivation. And so I think even over the past couple of years, I've evolved the way that I've thought about the importance of motivation and inspiration with the team. And I think particularly with the mature group, they've seen a lot of motivation. Everyone's seen the Gipper speech. And then at higher levels in the organization, you have folks that have a really good motor anyway. And my team has great internal motivation, great intrinsic motivation. And so I think, and particularly when we're talking about doing more with less, when you're taking things away that we previously had, I think about the article from a few years ago, The Enemies of Trust from Harvard Business Review. And so I think all of our organizations in the industry right now find us in a place where those things that are happening in our culture, in our organization, are infringing on that trust. And so this is, as I mentioned earlier, Jeff, when we talked, why I think trust is so important right now, even much higher than this motivation or inspiring. I think the motivation and inspiring are short bursts, and you get something from that, maybe. But if through these times of transformation, when we're doing more with less and taking things away in some instances, if people really trust you and know that you're consistent, even if they disagree with the decision, they can overall know and have a feeling that they're in the right place, that they're being led by the right person. And that, to me, is why over the past couple of years as a leader, I've really thought a lot more around what are those things that are the building blocks to trust, and how do you maintain that? It's really fragile.
A lot of people have been mentioning the fact that the middle manager is an endangered species, and I was, curious how you felt about that, and if there really is a role for that middle manager in Pharma's future.
Yeah, I think, okay, so this is a good question. And I don't know that I had thought about that specifically for that layer until you posed the question. But I think it's possible that middle management becomes somewhat of a dying breed. And do I think that's okay? I'm not completely sure. I think that a couple of things have to exist or have to be done well if that middle management level is going to not be there to the extent that it is today. I think the first thing that has to happen is that you have to have people in the front line who feel free to communicate the direction that they think the organization needs to go. I think people have to be vested in that communication, so they have to say it, and then I think it has to be heard. And then inversely, I think there has to be a really good communication plan if middle management is not part of the equation. I think it might sound intuitive that if the organization, the hierarchy is more flat, that communication is easier, but I'm not sure that that's the case. I think there's something that middle management does to facilitate that communication of what's necessary, what's practical, where the rubber meets the road, and then they also know at what point in time and what needs to be communicated more broadly. And I think that's an important piece that takes place at middle management that can really be broken down when you have folks at, on where the rubber meets the road again, and then at a very high level in the organization. So, yeah, I think it's real possible that people are going to have to make additional tough trade-off decisions, and that we'll see fewer folks sitting in that middle management spot. I think that's going to be a rough patch for some organizations if they don't get those two things ironed out.
Well, as businesses evolve and times change, as you've mentioned, considering leadership in the past to maybe 10 years ago to 5 years ago until now, I'm curious to know what nuggets you've learned from some of your mentors that were helpful, that helped you succeed, and that you still put into practice today.
I think there are things that you pick up from people along the way, and there's a handful of things that really stick with you. I think one of the key things that I was taught years ago was that you'll have a number of people in your ear on a number of different topics, and to be really selective in who you choose that are your counselors, both internally and externally. And to me, I think that's important to keep that group small and again, very consistent, so that person knows you and they're as familiar with your environment as possible. And for me, that's been something that's been very, very important. Even if you keep a broad group of connections, and I think that for any of us in the industry, it's important for us to have those external connections in the medical community. But who are those small handful of people that are really the go-to people? That's key, and that's a piece of advice I give a number of our folks who are up and coming, is to really be selective in that and be very conscious of who that is. Again, I think also you have to pick and choose who you're going to be, and this is about selecting priorities. And so you can't be all things to all people, and you need to be able to make trade-off decisions yourself. And I think that's a second piece, is to kind of calm yourself in the number of things that you want to do or the number of things that you want to be, and really set those priorities. And know that opportunities may not present themselves, or that you may be under-maximizing something. But in the end, I think it helps you sleep a little bit better at night to know that you have a really solid decision around what you'll be and what you want your organization to be in and around that. So those are a couple of things that have stuck with me just off the cuff.
And now, lastly, a little bit more challenging, but if we're thinking big picture, industry as a whole, what do you feel would be the prevalent organizational model for big pharma over the next 5 years? Are we talking about a return to innovation in science, possibly a distribution platform where we can execute commercially the inventions of others? Where do you really see pharma taking off as far as its organization over the next 5-10 years?
Well, I would hope that the industry get back to the basics. And I think what made us such a great sector within the American business place, and that's innovation. And so I like the thought of, and this is just me personally, not representing anything other than myself, but I always like the ability to go by when there is something that is validated or you feel like you want to take a chance on. But I very much appreciate the approach of innovating from within. So if it's a baseball analogy, you're developing the farm club instead of going out into free agency. And I think that that's where we need
Good analogy.
Yeah, I just think that if you take a look at the world, and specifically I think about my space in it in oncology, the technology and the innovation that has been lent globally has really been built by a handful of companies in the United States predominantly, and that's been made available for the world. And so I think getting back to the basics, making sure that we ensure that we are a machine of innovation, I think that's the play that I believe in. I think that there's a model of acquisition that has not panned out well over the last 5 to 10 years, and that's not where I'd really place my bet if I were placing bets and I were king for a day.
Byron, I really do appreciate your time. I want to thank you very much for joining us today and sharing your insights into leadership for the future. I'd also like to congratulate you one more time for being selected a 2011 Emerging Pharma Leader by Pharma Exec Magazine. And for those of you listening, I'd like to thank you as well.
Sejadim Relationship Management is proud to bring you the Pharmaceutical Executives podcast series, Managing in the Era of Lean, featuring the winners of the 2011 Emerging Leadership Awards. For more information, please visit them on the web at www.cegedim.com.